Erin Flanagan, first of all, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
What are your thoughts so far on the kinds of things you're hearing coming out ahead of the North American Leaders Summit, that they're going to be making some fairly significant announcement on clean power and also on methane emissions? What do you think?
Yeah, so we're very happy with what we're hearing. Early reports suggest that Mexico will be joining Canada and the US in reducing methane emissions from its oil and gas sector. For context, the three countries are 20% of the world's oil and gas methane emissions, so that's a really big deal from a climate perspective. They've also indicated that they're going to up the amount of clean power on the grid. So all told, this is really good climate news.
Why do you believe that, and you and the other groups involved in the coalition put out this statement and ahead of time suggesting that there's a window of opportunity here that hasn't existed in many years? What is it?
Well, I think it's all about legacy. For President Obama, he's thinking about his legacy on climate and energy. We know that under his 2 terms, he spent a lot of time thinking about how the United States can reduce its emissions and play a constructive role on the global stage. Legacy is also in play here in Canada. We have a brand new government that's trying to leave behind a legacy of climate laggardship. So we've got the 3 countries really thinking about progressive action, and so that gives us a window of opportunity to lock in some big victories.
How significant? Let's talk about a couple of the key things we've just briefly touched on. 50% of electricity coming from clean power by 2025.
Yeah.
What kind of a difference will that make in the fight against climate change?
Well, for perspective, the grids in the 3 countries right now are 37%. So we're looking at a change from 37% to 50%. When we talk about beating climate change, really it's about removing our reliance on fossil fuels and replacing fossil fuels with clean energy. So in order to get on that path, we need to up our renewable energy on the grid. So this commitment really is going to accelerate that process. For Canada, though, we're already achieving 50% clean energy, so we've got some business opportunities now on our hand.
And such as?
Well, if you're a clean energy developer in Canada, you're thinking about exporting your clean electrons into the market in the United States. The United States is currently regulating or attempting to regulate coal-fired electricity through the Clean Power Plan, and so actually this means that we'll be exporting more clean electricity into that market. So that's great for Canadian entrepreneurs that want to enter that space.
What about the, you touched on again, the methane, having everybody move in step to try and reduce methane emissions by up to 45% by 2025. Bringing Mexico into that deal is obviously the big game changer. And how big of a game changer is it?
Well, we're talking about the 2nd, 4th, and 5th largest oil and gas producing jurisdictions in the world. So this is really a model for what climate action can look like in places that have a strong economic reliance on fossil fuels. That's an important story for the world to hear about. This means now that North America can act as, play a leadership role, act as a leader in international negotiations on this topic. So it's very significant from a pure greenhouse gas perspective. As I said, 20% of the world's emissions, methane emissions, come from the 3 countries. It's also an important symbolic victory too. So we're bringing those 2 concepts together.
What are the other big steps that the leaders could take? Or I mean, the 2 things we've talked about, are those significant enough, or are there more things you expect from them?
We've also made recommendations on carbon pricing. So we know that business leaders and economists say over and over again that carbon pricing is the most cost-effective way to reduce emissions. And so we're recommending that the 3 leaders bring in carbon pricing systems. This is a very live conversation here in Canada. We have a pan-Canadian process where there is a whole working group talking about carbon pricing here at home. And so we're recommending that the 3 countries really accelerate their work on that and ensure that there is carbon pricing in all of the jurisdictions in North America.
What does that mean for consumers, and when, I suppose, is the question?
Yeah, well,
I mean, some Canadians already deal with it.
Absolutely. So carbon pricing, we've got lots of different models in play across Canada. We've got cap and trade, we've got the carbon tax. The real question is about what you do with the revenues. We're seeing different models there. Some of the money is being reinvested into transit initiatives to help people get to work on time and also cut carbon pollution from tailpipes. types. We're also seeing some models that reduce income taxes. So in some of these cases, we're reinvesting the revenue into the economy and finding new types of economic growth. So there are benefits for the consumer here as we try to build out that low carbon economy.
What are your thoughts on what needs to happen at this summit? We know that these three leaders seem to be deeply individually vested in the battle against climate change and the environment, but things could change in the United States. There's lots of talk there about the possibility of a Trump election victory and what that might mean to the battle against climate change. What are your concerns or thoughts on that?
Well, it's an important point, right? Signing up for a target is the easy part.
Right.
We've done that time and again. So really, this is about implementation. So in the announcements tomorrow, I'm looking for some firm language that suggests that new regulations will be developed and new policies will be implemented. That's really where the rubber hits the road. In terms of the U.S. election, I think we're seeing the world over really a new consensus emerging that tackling climate change is important in terms of an economic development strategy. This is really about finding new business opportunities for Canadians and for folks around the world to grow out an economy that's less polluting. So irrespective of the outcome of the U.S. election, we hope that they continue to play a leadership role on that.
All right, Erin Flanagan, thanks very much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.